right, we get it rolling on the Krueger Show. Hope everybody's having a great day. It is August the 18th, 2023, 11:06 a.m. on the West Coast, 2:06 p.m. on the East Coast. Welcome to the Pig and a Pickle Krueger Show, brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in Northern California. Check them out in Emeryville and Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week in both spots from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out. Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in Northern California. Also brought to you by Marin Auto Glass. Check them out, 415-883-3030 or at marinautoglass.com. And New York Style Sausage Company. The only sausage that I will eat is New York Style Sausage Company sausage. And we're talking with Jack Hammer, Santa Rosa Press Democrat, and, of course, the host of his own YouTube channel and a regular at Niner Camp. Jack, good morning. How are you, man?
I'm great, Larry. It's Friday. Looking forward to the game coming up tomorrow. Camp's been a lot of fun, like you said. So, yeah, let's get this thing rolling.
Yeah, no practice today. That's why neither of us are in Santa Clara. I've already streamed this morning with Ryan Hensley. I'm going to stream this afternoon on his channel. I'm streaming this afternoon with Damon Bruce on his channel. Rohan, I'm going to be on his channel today. Mark Adams is going to join me at 5 o'clock on my channel to talk a little bit about Roger Craig's candidacy for the Hall of Fame. I'm a real advocate for Roger to go to the Hall. And so we got a lot to do on this Friday as we stream coast to coast, basically, around the clock. And then tomorrow, of course, it'll be the game at Levi's, and then I'll do post-game on the channel. What do you got cooking on your channel the rest of the day after this?
I'm not sure what I'm going to do yet. You know, I don't do a lot of shows on my channel like a lot of other people do, especially like yourself and so on. But I'm not sure. There might be a little bit of an update depending on what happens throughout the day. I'll probably go in there with and put another update on my thoughts going into tomorrow. And then the game will come up tomorrow, and we'll be doing a post-game show for sure after that tomorrow. Everybody, it seems to like those instant reaction breakdowns, and that's pretty much what you'll see on the channel. Keep it locked in. If you're a subscriber to my channel, if you're not already subscribed to my channel, have the notifications on. That way you'll know when we get going.
There you go. And we're off and running here. We're going to do a little preview of Niners Broncos, which takes place tomorrow at Levi's Stadium. And then we'll do a little roster breakdown. But first I want to start with, wait for it, the quarterbacks. And ESPN today on First Take, Dan Orlovsky was on this roundtable. And I don't mind Orlovsky. Some of these other people on this panel are just flat out annoying as hell. But listen, this is Dan Orlovsky.
Well, that's
hold on a
fair
second. We
to
pause
say.
it.
Like, we don't know.
Hold on. We'll pause this for just a second. Orlovsky looks like Joy Taylor, another blonde lady. I'm not sure she is, and I'm not sure who the guy is opposite him. But Orlovsky's a former NFL quarterback. They're talking 49ers. And the question was, are you confident that Brock Purdy can lead the 49ers to a Super Bowl? Brock Purdy was 7-1 as a rookie, including the playoffs last year. The Niners, of course, lost in the NFC Championship game for the second straight season. It all says that here on the bottom of the screen. But I wanted to get your thoughts on Orlovsky's take here on Purdy and Darnold and the Niner quarterbacks, and then their reaction to it. And we can talk about that first. Here's Dan Orlovsky this morning on ESPN's First Take.
Oh, well, that's fair to say. Like, we don't know exactly who Brock Purdy is.
I'm
very confident.
Incredible last year, but it was the first year.
And that's absolutely fair to say. Yes, he can lead them to the Super Bowl. I think Brock Purdy and or Sam Darnold can take them to the Super Bowl, if I'm being dead honest.
Sam Darnold.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Sam Darnold is a incredibly talented. He's the most talented quarterback they have in the roster, throwing the ball wise. So, great defense. We all know that. Weaponry, Kyle Shanahan. I think the thing that changed for their offense a little bit with Brock Purdy post Jimmy Garoppolo was the little bit of the creativity, a little bit of, I don't have to call the perfect play for this young man because he's going to be able to either make the right choice or do something if it's not ideal. Like Kyle was, as a play caller, I don't want to say burdened, but it felt if the play call wasn't ideal in that situation with Jimmy, it wasn't going to work out well. Jimmy's a good player. I'm not here to bash Jimmy. Brock Purdy brought a little bit of creativity to their offense. I think the two questions I have about Brock are, can you do it again? And that's a little bit to your point, Molly.
Yeah.
Can you? It's hard to go year. Ben Roethlisberger used to say all the time, He waits for 3 years to see if a quarterback is going to be any good in the NFL or not. So can you do it again? Because, and Marcus Spears always says this, it's so much harder to game plan for a backup quarterback because you don't know what they are and or what they aren't. Mm-hmm. So now teams will. They have a whole offseason of seeing who he is in Kyle's offense, all that stuff. So can he do it again is going to be the big challenge. I believe he's capable of that. And then can he stay healthy? We know the history of quarterbacks there. They don't stay healthy, and he obviously got hurt last year. Those are their two biggest questions, more so than is the young man good enough? I think he is, and I think he'll do it again, but he has to go show that he could do it in the NFL. Oh, well, that's fair.
There you go. A little bit of Orlovsky, and as you can tell, there wasn't a lot of belief from Joy Taylor as far as the other two. They didn't comment in that clip. But what do you think of what Orlovsky said? He thinks that Brock Purdy can lead the 49ers to a Super Bowl. He believes that Sam Darnold can lead the 49ers to a Super Bowl. Jack, what do you think of that? Do you agree? Do you disagree?
I agree that I do believe that Brock Purdy could lead the 49ers to the Super Bowl. I think they might have even made the Super Bowl last year if he had stayed healthy in the NFC Championship game. So beyond that, I think he's going to be fine. I just the whole thing around this is just a matter of him staying healthy. If he stays healthy, if the team around him stays healthy, this is a Super Bowl team. Even if he doesn't necessarily have guys like something happens to McCaffrey, I think they're still going to be okay. Or something happens to Debo. He's shown that he can get through that. It's if they have a number of issues that might slow him down, or if the defense doesn't play at the level that they need them to play. But I think that Brock Purdy, based off of what we've seen so far in training camp and based off what we saw from him last year, he can take this team to the Super Bowl and possibly win it. Just depends on what happens on that day.
By the way, I said that was Joy Taylor. Somebody's in the chat saying it's Molly something. I don't
Molly
know.
Curum, I think is her name.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that, Molly. Anyway, didn't recognize Molly, and I didn't recognize the other two people on that panel either. But Orlovsky was the only one talking, so it really doesn't matter. The thing about it is, the health part of it is a big question. When people bring up the 49ers and their ability to, there it is, Keith Foster says, Molly Querum? There you go. People bring up the 49er quarterbacks. They always bring up, well, can they stay healthy? Do the 49ers, in your mind, do anything different than other teams that puts their quarterbacks in harm's way? Or is it literally just bad luck that their quarterbacks have gotten hurt through the years?
That's an interesting one. If we just you have to go like on a case by case basis for some of these injuries, but the injury to Jimmy Garoppolo. Let's take two of the most recent injuries. The injury to Jimmy Garoppolo in 2021, where he injures his thumb, and the injury to Brock Purdy in the NFC Championship game, where he injured his elbow. Both of those came when you had a tight end blocking a defensive end. One of them was George Kittle. The other one was a guy who's no longer even around the team. And is that something that only the 49ers do? No, there's other teams around the NFL that use tight ends to block those defensive ends. An argument can be made again in the NFC Championship game that it shouldn't have been a tight end there, that it would have been better if they had a scheme more similar to what the Chiefs did 2 weeks later, where they were double teaming that Hassan Reddick, using a tight end to kind of chip and then the tackle coming off after, a little bit less of a run heavy look on their play action, that kind of thing. But that's a long-winded answer to say no. I don't think they do anything necessarily different from other teams that's causing their quarterbacks to injure. You look across the NFL, and there's a lot of teams last year that had to go at least to their backup quarterback. I think there was only like 7 or 8 teams, maybe 9 last year that had their quarterbacks play a full 17 games.
I just looked at the Purdy injury as somewhat freakish. I think you could probably say the same thing about the Garoppolo injury, right? I mean, he took a knee to the ankle and had to wind up with a Liz Frank foot injury right there on the base of the foot and ankle. I mean, what did the 49ers necessarily do, or even the 49er offensive line do to cause the Garoppolo injury? Well, I mean, he was getting sacked. He was trying to fight for more yardage. A D lineman put his knee down on the wrong spot of his foot, and there you go. As far as the Purdy injury, I mean, that was a blown block. People are going to question that play, but I mean, to me, I didn't question that play. And people will question, Tyler Croft blocking Hassan Reddick there, and people did. But it's football; it happens. Brock should have stepped up. That ball should have came out. Only thing I would have said about that is, to me, watching Philly down the stretch with their 70 sacks last year, I don't know that I would have gone play action pass early in that game, just simply because they weren't respecting the run action. They were just, and so what are you doing going play action pass? You're essentially just taking an extra half second to carry out the play fake. And if they're not going to honor the play fake at all, and the film kind of showed that they weren't really doing that, then maybe they should have just kind of eliminated play action altogether, because it wasn't necessarily going to be effective against Philly's defense. But other than, I really don't see a common denominator where you can say, well, the 49ers do X, Y, and Z, and they put their quarterbacks in harm's way. It's a run-heavy scheme, right? They run the ball quite a bit. Game to game, it can change, but basically it's a run-heavy scheme. So, they run, they play action pass off of it. I don't necessarily see any culpability or blame that can be thrown at the 49ers for how they handle their quarterbacks.
Yeah, I agree with you in that sense. I think that you can. I don't agree with the narrative that's out there that it's a 49er Kyle Shanahan, deserves all of the, it's all about Kyle Shanahan. It's all about his offense. I don't necessarily buy into that narrative. There's something to be said about it, and we'll see what happens moving forward with Brock Purdy. Like you said, it was a little bit of a freak injury, but at the same time, Nick Mullins had the same injury occur to him playing in this system back in 2020 against the Cowboys. I don't remember all the specifics around that. They just get hurt a lot. I don't necessarily think it's just a Kyle Shanahan thing, though. I think it's something that happens around the NFL. The guys that are running his offense around the league have dealt with a lot of injuries at the quarterback position, other than the Green Bay Packers when they had Aaron Rodgers, but that's also Aaron Rodgers who gets the ball out of his hands quick, probably as quick as anybody in the NFL. So he avoids some of these hits. Beyond that, I just don't see it being much of an issue where I'm going to say it's Kyle Shanahan and he's, not taking care of his quarterbacks, and that's why they're having this issue.
Couple of things I want you to react to. This is another one that I thought was interesting. This is Ari Myrov. And did you see this yesterday with Joe Banner? Joe Banner is a former president of the Eagles. He worked with the Browns and Falcons. He's worked with Kyle Shanahan. He was asked about Trey Lance and Kyle and his future with the 49ers. And let's hear from Joe Banner here with Ari Myrov. This was put out on the 33rd team, I believe, is the
Trey Lance start on Sunday in the preseason game, and if you just looked at the box score, you probably thought, wow, he had such a good game. But if you watched it, you saw that his touchdown pass should have probably been an interception. You saw that he was sacked 4 times. It was not really a great game for Trey Lance. Joe, Trey has been in these trade chatter all off season long. Brock Purdy is ahead of schedule. They signed Sam Darnold in free agency. Do you feel like Trey's future is in San Francisco? How should they handle all of this here with the regular season approaching in a couple of weeks?
Yeah, so my answer is affected a lot by the fact that I worked with Kyle Shanahan. And he's obviously a really good coach. I worked with some really good offensive coordinators. He is as smart, if not smarter than any of them. But he's a very emotional guy, and he tends to be a fairly short-term thinker. And once you get in his doghouse, it's really hard to get out. But knowing the way Kyle is wired, it's really hard for me to picture how they could ever just get back into a really good, positive place supporting each other. So that leaves me with kind of a simplistic that if they could find another place and give Trey a chance to showcase what at least I thought he could be in the draft, and let Kyle make his bet on the other guys he hasn't watched on, because it's just very hard. Once he gets down on a player, it's just very hard to get him back into a place where he's really objective about it, and that's not going to be good for any player. but especially for a
And the
quarterback.
reality is, I mean, Trey, of course, was drafted number 3 overall. They traded a bunch of picks to get him, but he missed that final year of college because of COVID, only played 1 game. His rookie year, he was essentially a backup. His second year, he had 1 start in a monsoon. His second start has a season-ending injury. This is a player who simply has not really played much, and he just doesn't have enough reps. And it felt like San Francisco was looking into last year being we'll work with him, we'll let him grow, and eventually he'll be our guy. But then the injury happened. You just wonder if they're going to have patience to do it again, and it doesn't feel like they will. There were those trade rumors this offseason. I got the sense they were willing to do it if the price was right, and no team stepped forward. We'll see if anything changes here the next couple of weeks. If he shines in the preseason and someone says, you know what, we'll offer a more valuable pick. But if not, I've said this a lot here on the site, it doesn't hurt to carry 3 quarterbacks after what happened last year for San Francisco. So I wouldn't be shocked if they also just keep all 3 guys and also have Brandon Allen potentially on the practice squad eventually, just so we have enough quarterbacks for this loaded team that could be Super Bowl caliber.
There you go. Ari Myrov on the 33rd team there with Joe Banner. Now, Joe Banner is, an executive. He was former president of the Eagles. And as I said, he said a couple interesting things there. One, he seemed to indicate that he had hopes for Trey Lance in the draft. So it's like there have been people that said that they would never draft Trey Lance or at least didn't have enough information on him coming out. Well, Banner's not one of them. Banner seemed to think that he had more ability than he's shown thus far. But he also made a dramatic statement there, and that is he kind of painted a picture of Trey Lance being in Kyle Shanahan's doghouse. Do you think that's accurate, Jack?
I don't think he's in his doghouse. I think the problem with Trey Lance, the reason why Trey Lance is in the situation that he's in is he hasn't stayed healthy since he came to San Francisco. Trey Lance has been on this team for 2 years, and basically what the Flyers have dealt with Trey Lance during that time is what they've dealt with Jimmy Garoppolo. And I think one of the reasons why they moved off of Jimmy Garoppolo was a very good quarterback for them, but he couldn't stay healthy. They lost 2018 because of the injuries to Garoppolo. They lost the 2020 season because of injuries to Jimmy Garoppolo. You look at Trey Lance, and their plan for him was for him to come in, compete with Jimmy Garoppolo for the starting quarterback role in 2021. He couldn't beat Garoppolo out, so they kind of, we know how that played out the rest of that season. They handed him the keys to the team in 2022, and he was injured after 5 quarters. I don't, so saying that, and then on top of that, not only did Trey Lance get injured, and so now he's on the sidelines, but then you have this kid come on the scene. Brock Purdy comes out and he blew it away. He played in an extremely high level, and that is the reason why he is the starting quarterback of this team right now, and why with Trey Lance, I don't think the Flyers are out on Trey Lance in any way. I just think that the 49ers see the future with Brock Purdy. They saw what he could do last year, and they have a lot of belief in him. And Trey Lance is still working through things that he was working through in 2021 when he joined this team.
But he made it seem like that Trey's done in San Francisco. You don't share that belief. You think that if Darnold winds up being number 2, and there's one more soundbite that I want to play, because you asked a question that was kind of Kyle Shanahan that was kind of based on this soundbite, and let me play this soundbite, and then, because people may not have heard this, this is going to be now Michael Lombardi. And Lombardi, I thought, went way too far here, but here's Lombardi talking on DraftKings, on the show on DraftKings, about Trey Lance.
As you go down this road with Lance, it just becomes harder and harder and harder. And you could show all the clips of him moving and all that stuff. At the end of the day, when his mama lifted him from the crib, he just didn't have that quarterback instinct. He is not going to be the backup quarterback. I don't know what they're going to do with him, but there's no chance. There is no chance based on the evidence that I've seen and based on what I've heard.
Michael, I asked you this before we ended the Lombardi line yesterday on VSiN. I think that he might be competing to stay on the 53-man roster. Like, is that where we're at with Trey Lance right now? Like, are these reps looking for him to be able to say, can he stay on this roster and be a viable 49er?
Well, I think you got to look at this, right? Like, that once you reach a conclusion on a player, okay, once you really have a handle on who the player is, then you've got to make some decisions.
There you go. That was Michael Lombardi. And there was two interesting parts to that, Jack. There was, the part where he guarantees that he will not be the backup quarterback. And then there was the part that a lot of people pointed to that really seemed like it was a poorly worded way of saying he lacks quarterback instincts, bringing up when his mama lifted him from the crib. I mean, that just seemed so unnecessary. You asked Kyle Shanahan specifically about the criticism that Trey has been getting. And I thought Kyle could have taken it in any direction. Instead, he said, hey, that's kind of life in the NFL. And Trey's keenly aware of what's out there. And, he's smart and he knows that, he understands the entire picture, the media picture, so on and so forth. But it wasn't like he wasn't mad at Mike Lombardi, that's for sure. And if anything, he seemed to be like, hey, it's par for the course when you play quarterback in the NFL. Go ahead. Tell us what you asked him and what your takeaway was from his answer.
I just wanted to get his take on the different comments that have been made, especially this one by Lombardi. I think the Lombardi take was garbage. That's one of the reasons why I didn't quote tweet it, because I didn't want to give it any more air than it needed. I think it's a bunch of bullshit. I don't think you need to go in that direction. And Lombardi's been extremely harsh on Trey Lance throughout. And I just think that was crossing a line that I usually don't get very upset with.
Why do you think that is the case?
I think he's trying to.
Does it date back to the Mac Jones stuff?
Yeah, I think that's probably the starting point. I think that's where it comes from. I think it kind of initiates with the Mac Jones thing for a lot of people. A lot of the heavy anti-Trey people are the same people that were the pick is Mac Jones, and then they're all proven wrong. So that's part of it. And I think the other piece with Michael Lombardi used to be, Michael Lombardi used to be a big name, and he was on TV. And I don't know if he's on TV anymore. He's just trying to make it with his podcast now. And you say stupid stuff like that sometimes to get people to pay attention to you. And he's getting a lot of attention. That's one of the reasons why I haven't put it out there. And even when people call you an idiot, they still will continue to watch you. So I just don't like that one. In terms of Sam Darnold, so don't keep going down that path. But in terms of Sam Darnold being the guarantee number 2, I can understand why when you watch Sam Darnold compare him to Trey Lance when they're on the field, like if you just watch that game from Sunday in Las Vegas, why you would come away thinking that Sam Darnold is the maybe the guaranteed number 2. He looks way smoother than Trey Lance. He just when you watch his play, he is smooth. But the difference between him, when you look at the results aren't much different. And I think that's the biggest thing is that, Trey Lance's style might not fit everybody's style, but at the end of the day, he is making plays. He struggled. Yes, he struggled on those first few possessions to get rolling, but he worked his way out of it and then had some nice possessions at the end. It was basically a tale of 2 games. The first 3 series, rough. The last 3 series, that was pretty good stuff you could work with moving forward. And that's even Kyle Shanahan kind of said he wished that he could have kept him in the game there to see how that would have progressed into the second half. And I agree with him. With Sam Darnold, there's a lot of things to like about the way the ball comes out of his hand. It looks pretty, all that kind of stuff. But, yesterday, for example, at training camp, we're there. A lot of the people watching this weren't. He had a miss to Troy Fumagalli that was very reminiscent of the miss that Jimmy Garoppolo had in the NFC Championship game back in 2021 to George Kittle. Kittle running wide open down the middle of the field, airmails him. Yesterday, it's Troy Fumagalli in practice, wide freaking open down the middle of the field, and he just completely misses him. And there's a lot to like about Sam Darnold, like I said, but right now, I don't think Sam Darnold's beaten out Trey Lance. If you've been there every day watching these guys practice every day, I don't think that he's beaten him out. Now we don't get the eye in the sky like we do during the preseason games, but heck, I would say right now Trey Lance I think that he's in really good position to be the backup, and I think a lot of it's going to come down to how Darnold plays and when he gets some extended time, probably on Saturday.
The one thing though that Lombardi was guaranteeing that he won't be the backup, and I'm wondering if that's just him trying to talk big for clicks and attention, or if he actually has a source. I mean, this is a guy who works in the NFL and has worked in the NFL with a number of different franchises, the 49ers, the Raiders, the Patriots, I believe, and others. What do you think? I mean, are the Niners going to keep $14 million of backup quarterbacks? Because that's ultimately what they would be doing if they went with Darnold and Lance as 2 and 3 or 3 and 2. Any way you slice it, it's $14 million of backup quarterbacks. They can afford it, but it's not like they can't make better use of that money because they've got a ridiculous cap situation staring them in the face in 2024, and every dollar you don't spend this year, you can roll over into next year. So it's not like, hey, you know what, just do it. It doesn't matter. It does matter. I mean, if you go with $14 million in backup quarterbacks, you're probably going to have to say goodbye to some other player in 2024 to get things right on the cap. What's the priority?
I think that there's a couple of things that can happen depending on what happens with Nick Bosa and how they decide that they want to structure everything with Bosa. They can save some money against their cap this year with the way that restructure comes down with his new contract, because he's on the 5th-year option. That 5th-year option number can be lowered with a new contract. Just depends on when they get that done. When it comes to Lance, I don't think Lance is an asset to the 49ers as it stands. I don't see the 49ers being a team that's just going to give up on an asset without getting something in return. So I don't see them just releasing Trey Lance, but at the same time, I don't see a team all of a sudden that's going to come knocking on their door, giving them anything more than the 5th-round pick they were already, offered. He hasn't proven enough in the NFL to be worth that. More than that at this point to other teams. So I really think you're going to go into this season. It's going to be Brock Purdy as your starter, Lance and Darnold to be behind him. And then, they'll see if they can get Brandon Allen onto the practice squad. That's the direction that it feels like. I can understand. Again, I can feel everybody that's saying opposite in terms of, you've got to make a move, but I don't see them making that move because that's not the way they usually do business. They don't give up. The 49ers have a history of not giving up assets just to give them up.
Easy Mercs with the Z says, "Hey, Larry, you have a chat. Pay attention to it." Well, I also have a guest here in Jack Hammer, and I want to pay attention to him as well. We'll get to the chat, and there's a lot of good comments in the chat, and some people battling back and forth between each other, which is pretty much par for the course in the chat. There's always some kind of internal battle going on in the chat. People turn on other people. You're not a real fan, this and that. It gets ugly. Trey sexuals are not Niner fans, blah, blah, blah. All this stuff about, Easy Merc saying it's Brock Star, which is quoting Jawan Jennings. We do have this super chat that we'll get to from Ink Talk TV. It says, name the last elite quarterback that started and balled out. Big Ben Roethlisberger, all of this Super Bowl window BS have this organization making the most stupid moves like Sam Darnold. Well, I just think ultimately when you have the battle scars of losing an NFC championship game because you ran out of quarterbacks that could play, there's no end to the quarterback options that you want available. If the Niners, I'm sure they would talk to the league. If they could add 2 more guys to the roster and have them be quarterbacks, they'd have 5 quarterbacks. Just simply because they don't want to run out. They don't want to ever feel the way they felt when they boarded that airplane to leave Philadelphia at the end of last year. And you know that. I mean, I don't even have to ask anybody that. I know that. And you can tell by the way they've talked about the quarterbacks and the way they've gone about their business that they're intent on having a deep and loaded and experienced quarterback room, and that's what they have right now, right? You got Brock, you got Trey, you got Sam Darnold, who was a number 1 at the end of last year. He could be the number 3 here. You got Brandon Allen, who was a number 2 all of last year. He might be the number 4 here. So, they're trying to load this thing up as much as they possibly can. Who are going to be the 3 quarterbacks when they cut this thing down to 53 in your mind?
Yeah, well, the other name to throw out real quick here in terms of the last elite quarterback that started ball out, you can go with Russell Wilson back in 2012 as well. He got him into the playoffs his rookie year, and we know how that progressed for him. But beyond that, you look at the 49ers 3 quarterbacks. It's clear. There's no doubt who the starting quarterback is. The starting quarterback is Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy's the best quarterback on this roster. Let's just make sure we understand that first. That's clear. When it comes to Trey Lance and Sam Darnold, I would give the nod right now to Trey Lance over Sam Darnold as the backup, with Darnold being number 3. That's the way that I see it right now. And we got one more game here to kind of get us a little bit more information. Kyle Shanahan talked about yesterday. He said that he looks at preseason games as just practice. So basically, they have another practice that everybody gets to watch on television, and Sam Darnold's going to get more reps there. We might even see some of Brock Purdy in that game. So it's Purdy, it's Lance, and it's Darnold for me in that order right now.
Digital Drew says, sorry, launching the pre-order beta. I love listening, though. LOL, hashtag Mortal Kombat 1. Digital Drew, we'll be talking to you tomorrow morning when the coach stops by. Digital Drew is going to be with us as well. Robbie439 says, Larry, any rumblings of the Niners trading for any O-line or D-line players, any free agent talk? I haven't heard any trades, but I think when you look at the 53-man roster, and we will take a gander at it before we get out of here, I think it's, if you said to me, will there be a trade before the August 29th 53-man roster cut involving the 49ers, I would put the over-under. I would say absolutely there will be, and I would put the over-under at 2.5 as far as total number of trades, that the 49ers will make, and we'll get to the possibilities. But Jack, what's your thought on this question from Robbie? Do you think? Have you heard any free agent talk, any D-line or O-line rumors? I mean, they just brought in 3 offensive tackles to work out the other day. They brought in, a couple different D linemen. They brought in Breland Speaks, who doesn't look very good. They brought in Dalen Hayes. They've already cut him. They brought in Taco Charlton. They still have him. Clearly, they're looking for depth, quality depth, on the D line, and probably a swing tackle on the O line.
Yeah, you're right. They brought in Jesse Davis, Rashad Hill, Tyler I don't know how to say his name.
Nasheki, yeah.
Nasheki. They brought those guys in for a workout on Wednesday. There was no signing made there. So they're looking. Another name that I would say they should go out. You've mentioned this one to me, and it's still there. It's Tom Compton. If you know what you've got, who Tom Compton is. Is he healthy? Is he in shape? Does he want to play? If he does, bring him in. Because that's the biggest question with this team right now, isn't there? When you look at this offensive line, who the top 5 are. You really know who the top 6 are. The top 6 are the starting offensive line plus John Feliciano. It's behind that starts getting a little dicey. So if you could, Tom Compton, I think could step in if he's completely healthy, and he could compete for that swing tackle job and probably push out Jalen Moore if they really wanted him to, just like he did in 21. So. On the defensive side, I'm not hearing anything there. I don't really know. Looking at the names that are out there right now, I don't see a name that I would be like, yeah, they need to go get this guy. They lost him. They lost that guy. That was Justin Houston, but he went somewhere else. So at this point, I think they've got what they've got. They've got to get Nick Bosa in. That's the biggest thing. Get Nick Bosa in. They've got to get Drake Jackson healthy. He didn't practice at all this week. He was on the field a little bit more yesterday, but working on the side field with the trainers. They need to get him healthy. And Bosa is the whole key to this whole defensive line. He's the engine that makes it run.
Yeah. And what do you think? I mean, here we are. It's the 18th of August. No sign of Bosa. No sign that it's on the horizon. Are you concerned? How concerned? I mean, the Niners don't appear to be concerned. They're not. We haven't heard the typical trade rumblings or any kind of threats or anything. John Lynch maintained to us early on in this process that they were going to try to keep everything private, that him and the agent have an agreement. So if there's bad blood, it's bad blood that's going on behind the scenes. What's your level of concern with Nick Bosa and the fact that he's yet to show up on the 18th of August?
It's the level of concern right now is relatively low. We're not hearing anything because Bosa's not saying anything. This is the 180 degree opposite of 360. We'd be right back where we started. So 180 degree opposite of what we saw with Deebo Samuel last year. It's the complete different situation. It's all quiet. Nothing from Bosa, nothing from the 49ers. And, we can't get anything out of anybody because we don't get a chance to talk to John Lynch anymore. And so, we're just kind of sit here in a holding pattern. Next Friday makes a lot of sense to me to get it done by then, because next Friday is the last preseason game. That gives you 2 weeks to get him ramped up and ready to play for in week 1 in Pittsburgh.
So you're saying no preseason for Bosa. To me, the ideal signing day would be this Sunday, 2 days from now. You sign him the day after this Denver game. You sign him then. You have a press conference on Monday saying, hey, we got Nick Bosa signed. You introduce him into practice a little bit. Maybe he plays a series if you want him to against the Chargers in the final preseason game. Maybe he doesn't, but you get him, shake out the rust for a few days in practice, and then into Pittsburgh. I personally would like to see him throw, have like 2 or 3 practices and maybe 2 or 3 series before Pittsburgh. I think that's the ideal. If you said to me, what's ideal? I think it's ideal that you don't sign him until the 20th, which would be tomorrow. It'd be 2 days from now. And then you get him a couple days of practice and a couple series in the game, and away you go.
Yeah, I don't think we've ever seen Nick Bosa on the field during the preseason. So I don't think that's something that they're.
He hasn't played.
He didn't play in the preseason as a rookie. We didn't see him the first time we saw him on the field as a rookie outside of practice was in week 1 in Tampa. If my memory, I'm getting old, so I could be wrong on that, but I feel pretty good about that. And I don't think he played last year either. He's a guy who, he gets his work done in practice. He knows what he's got to do. It's defensive ends different than quarterbacks and those kind of things. So it's not like I feel like he needs to get reps in the game, but I'd like to see him get in the camp sooner than later so he can just get used to hitting other people and running around with the guys. That's the thing with Nick Bosa is I think he's probably working as hard as he, right now in Florida as he does when he's out here in the Bay Area. So I think that's the only reason for me why I'm not really overly concerned about it, but they need to get him in. And I would say, I could agree with you that Sunday would be perfect because it'd be great to see him on Monday and be able to have him there for a press conference. But I think it's going to be probably coming up after the preseason games are over with.
Interesting. One more super here from Shadrack Willis. He says, best case scenario is Trey Lance takes off and we have top 5 quarterbacks or a top 5 quarterback within a few years. These preseason games will show a lot. Trey looked really rusty and fidgety and nervous. And to me, that just says to me that he hasn't played a lot and it's important to him. I don't take a huge negative away from that first preseason game. To me, it shows a positive. It shows that he wants to be good and he's nervous and he hasn't played in a while and he's rusty. And it's because I thought we saw the best of Trey in the back end of that performance and the worst of him up front. Mm-hmm. That all being said, to me, the one thing that I think is clear is that he's not really – his speed in getting rid of the ball is still too slow, and his clock's a little too slow. There's no doubt, and I've been saying it all offseason, that Brock Purdy should be the number 1 guy and start in Pittsburgh week 1. But I think if you ask me the question, like some people are like, oh, Trey needs to play. He absolutely needs to play. He needs to play right now. Well, he got better from last year to this year and he didn't play. So how did he get better? He got better by doing mental reps and some physical reps and working with a coach. I don't know that he's ready to play. And in the NFL, if you're not ready to play, it's a painful experience. So I don't know. I think I might push back on the people who say, oh, he's just got to play. No, he's got to develop, and he hasn't played a lot. Eventually, he's got to play. But I'm a firm believer that you need to play when you're ready to play and when you're ready to succeed. Because if you go out there as a quarterback and you play and you get sacked a ton, you don't succeed, your confidence is gone, and then now it's not just about getting reps. Now it's about rebuilding your confidence. So I think in some ways you could make an argument that he doesn't need to play until he's ready to play. And based on what I saw last week, he seems like he's not quite ready to play. Where do you think ultimately is going to be best for Trey Lance? And do you think he is going to wind up being on this roster? There's an awful lot of speculation that he won't be.
Yeah, in reality, the real best thing for Trey Lance would be for him not to be in the NFL right now, and it's not because I know how that sounds, but like that super chat saying that the 49ers are going to have a top 5 quarterback in Trey Lance. Let's get Trey Lance to a point where he's capable of being a starting quarterback that plays at a decent level. First off, we're not there. We're not even there yet. I don't think. I think when it comes that, I think what that super chat right there pointed out is one of the reasons why this is such a debate and why people get so caught up in this debate between the quarterbacks is that there's such a super high belief in Trey Lance. And I'd really like to get a better understanding of what that belief is, other than the fact that the guy is big and strong and can throw the ball a long ways, because those things don't make you a good quarterback. And I agree with you 100%. We've seen improvement from Trey Lance over last year. There's no doubt about it. He is a better quarterback right now, today, than he was this time last year. The ball comes out much better. He's got much better with his accuracy, and he's doing things that he didn't do in the past. At the same time, I think what we saw on Sunday early on is something that we've seen to an extent in camp, but we just don't see it as much or recognize it as much because of our angle of watching the game. We're standing on the sideline and we're watching the play like this as it's happening, like everybody else. When we watch the game on TV, you're up a high, so you can see the entire field. It's a much different look. And I think there's been a lot of times during camp where there have been times when he could throw the ball and he just doesn't do it. We saw it on Tuesday when they were doing the red zone drill. There was 2 back-to-back plays where he got into the pocket, stood there, look. One time he got sacked. The other time he bailed and threw the ball incomplete. And so there's issues there. There's just little things like that. And he's going to have to work through it. And that's why I say I don't know if the NFL is the spot for him right now, because he's not going to play in the NFL unless he goes to a team that's really, really bad. And I think that's why I think this is all the reason why you're seeing teams not offer anything more than a 5th round draft pick for him. Why would the Atlanta Falcons, somebody put out a tweet the other day, who says no to this trade? The Atlanta Falcons receive Trey Lance and the 49ers receive Pitts. And I responded to him and I said, the Falcons say no to that. And why? Because why would the Falcons invest in another project quarterback when they've already been developing a quarterback for a year and now going into a second year? It makes no sense. And it's the same thing that I would say in Washington. I like Trey Lance. He's a great kid. He is a hard worker. You can see the improvement, but saying that Trey Lance is ever going to be a top 5 quarterback is we're a long ways from Trey Lance ever getting there. We are much closer to Brock Purdy being a top 5 quarterback in the NFL than Trey Lance. And it has nothing to do other than the fact that one guy got the experience in college and he's already showing it. And Trey Lance has a lot of things to really like about him. There's a lot of measurables and all that kind of stuff, but it's just not translating into the game yet. You could win games with Trey Lance, I think, if you're the 49ers. But this top 5 stuff, man, we need to let's roll it back a little bit. Let's get him to where where he's good enough for a team to say, we'll give you we've got to have this guy, because at the door, they're just not knocking on the door for Trey Lance right now. The whole top 5 thing is just, I'm not trying to put anybody down, but we need to step off that discussion, because that's just not where we are. We're not even close to that right now.
It's a really interesting thing because there's so many layers to it. It's like the Niners don't want to look bad. If they trade him for a 5th or 6th or 7th round pick, they're taking the L. It's an official loss. And then at the same time, if you said to me, let's predict how it's going to go, I think they are going to move him. And I've said that this entire offseason. I really think they are. I think they were trying to move him in the draft. I don't think they got an offer that they wanted. And I don't know, what they would want, but to me, the kind of move that they need to make with him, unless they want to lose face. And I think they're going to go with Brock Purdy as the 1, Sam Darnold as the 2, and I think they're going to go with Brandon Allen as the 3, partly for cap reasons. He makes $1 million, and partly because I think they want to make a concrete commitment to Brock Purdy going forward. But then, once again, you take a huge loss if you trade him for a 5th round pick or a 7th round pick or something like that. To me, the only deal I could see that would make sense would be as if you traded Trey with a pick to a team for a veteran player that could help you win the Super Bowl this year. Tampa comes to mind with Devin White. Washington comes to mind with Chase Young or Montez Sweat. These are good players, but you probably could get them for a third round pick right now. I could see the 49ers trading a 3rd round pick and Trey Lance to one of those 2 teams for that veteran player And essentially that team's getting, Trey Lance to take him off the 49ers plate, off their cap, and they're getting the same thing they would get for Devin White, except now you're getting Trey Lance and a third-round pick, or you're getting the same thing you would get for Chase Young, except now you're getting Trey Lance in that third-round pick. That's the only deal I think that makes sense. The rest of these deals, like just trading him for a 7th-round pick or a 5th-round pick or even a 3rd-round pick in next year's draft, I don't see how that helps the 49ers win the Super Bowl this year. But if you ask me to make a final prediction on what I think is going to happen, I'll stay with what I've predicted all offseason, that the Niners are going to recommit to Brock Purdy, that he's their guy, and that they're going to move off of Trey Lance. And all the indications are that that's the case. That's why Sam Darnold's here, or that's why Brandon Allen's here. I don't think they've gotten an offer they want, but I think they ultimately will, especially if Trey plays decently in these last 2 preseason games. How do you see the 49er quarterback picture at the cutdown? Who's going to get lopped off?
I see, and like the trades that you just put up, those would be positive trades for the 49ers. But you got to ask yourself, why would the Washington Redskins give up a really valuable defensive end pass rusher for a guy that's not going to help them win a game this season? I shouldn't say that.
Well, we don't know that. We don't know that. And why would they do it? Because they're going to pay Jonathan Allen and Daron Payne a ton. They already have not picked up Chase Young's 5th-year option. There's a lot of speculation in the NFL world that they're going to move one of those defensive ends. They don't have a long-term quarterback answer. This would be taking a flyer on a guy who was a top 5 pick. You just heard Joe Banner's thoughts. It sounds like some personnel people still have a high opinion of Trey Lance. They may share that belief. Martin Mayhew was here when the Niners took Trey Lance, so maybe he has an affinity for Lance. I mean, a lot of this is speculation on my part, but I just think that the 49ers, it makes no sense for the Niners to move off of Trey Lance unless they get something that can help them win the Super Bowl. But I also don't see a burgeoning market for Trey Lance, but I do think they want to commit to Brock Purdy, and they have Brandon Allen and Sam Darnold. And the way that John Lynch talked about Brandon Allen and his pregnant wife going into this last game, he made it sound like, oh, man, this guy's part of our family. It didn't sound like, hey, 10 days from now, I'm going to cut the guy who I'm now, saying, hey, congrats on the newborn baby. Now, it's the NFL and anything can happen, but those are the options. Darnold's here, Purdy's here. They're not going anywhere. It's a matter of, are they going to cut Brandon Allen or trade Brandon Allen, or are they going to find a new home for Trey Lance? You just heard Lombardi, who does have sources, say Trey Lance is not going to be the backup quarterback. Now, I don't like the way he said it and the phrasing he used, and that's a different topic and different part of that. But that's the other takeaway from his line, is that here's a guy with sources who's like guaranteeing that Trey's not only not going to be the starter, that he's not going to be the backup.
Yeah, and if the 49ers are going to move off of Trey Lance this year, they are going to have to get egg on their face. They're not going to get I just don't see a way that they are going to get a player like Chase Young or Devin White for Trey Lance. I just don't see it. I could be completely wrong. I think if they're going to move off of him, it's going to be for a 5th or a 6th round draft pick, and that's it. And that's why I don't think the move is going to be done. Maybe they just bite the bullet. Maybe there's more going on behind the scenes with Trey Lance that we haven't heard. In which he's trying to pressure the 49ers into making a move. But I have a hard time I just don't see a team giving up a valuable asset for a quarterback, which is a different position, unless you expect him to come in and be your starter right away. I don't see it. In terms of Washington, I think they're further down the road with developing the quarterback that they have there, and that's the direction that they want to go. So if you're bringing in Lance, you're giving up a really valuable defensive asset for a guy that's going to be a backup. Out in Tampa Bay, maybe a little bit more of a situation there because they don't have a guy that they're developing. They don't have a long-term possible solution, I think, unless they decide that they're going to make that be, Baker Mayfield, which, he's been okay in his NFL career. He's pretty much been a flop as well. I don't know. If the 49ers are moving off of Trey Lance, I think the move is one that's going to be a bad move on their part because they're not going to get much in return. It's going to be they're going to get pennies on the dollar for what they used to get him.
Matthew Rowley with the super chat. Thank you, Matthew. He says, late with this, but I don't get why Michael Lombardi's comments are so bad. All he's saying is that Lance doesn't have that it factor good quarterbacks have. Why is that worse than other negative takes? I just didn't like the way he said it. I mean, first of all, it's stupid. I mean, are you telling me that who's the best quarterback in the NFL today? Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes' record at Texas Tech was not good. So wait, so when Patrick Mahomes' mama lifted him from the crib, did she know that? Was it known then that Mahomes was some awesome quarterback? No, he wasn't. He was sub 500 at Texas Tech. So I just think that and also it's just a weird, clumsy way of saying that great quarterbacks are born, not made. But then what about I push back and say, what about Steve Young? Steve Young was not good with Tampa Bay. Steve Young was not good early in the days with the 49ers. Steve Young's first playoff game, he turned the ball over 4 times against the Washington Redskins. He was made, not born. I'm not saying that Trey Lance is Steve Young, but I'm just saying there's a number of quarterbacks who develop over time, and this whole imagery of, and he just didn't need to go there. It just to me it was offensive. It sounded offensive. What do you think, Jack? I mean, you heard it as well. Why was there such pushback on Lombardi's statement? Because in some ways he just was saying Trey is a raw quarterback and he's never had the traits that it takes to be a great quarterback. But the verbiage sounded bad.
Yeah, there's a million ways that you could say that there's issues with Trey Lance as a quarterback, but the one with that what Lombardi's route to me crossed the line, and that it seemed like he made it personal. That's going to his mama, lifting him out of the crib, that makes it personal. That's no longer keeping it to the play on the field. And if you're not good enough with your words to be able to just keep it to the play on the field, then just don't say anything, because that was just not. I just don't agree with that. I don't think that's a good direction at all. That's why I don't usually, like I said earlier on in the show, I don't usually get upset by this kind of stuff, but that was the one to me that just kind of pushed over the edge, and that's why I asked the question to Kyle Shanahan. It got to the point where you had to ask the question. I wish I'd phrased the question a little bit more to make sure that he knew it was Michael Lombardi that said it, and actually just read the quote out loud to him. The reason I didn't was because I did not want to give Michael Lombardi's name any more airtime than it deserved. And I've seen that question come up now. NBC Sports Bay Area put it out. Rich Eisen put it out on his. I'm glad that I didn't say anything about Michael Lombardi. He didn't need the advertisement for what he was. I just think it was garbage what he said. And then real quick, while we're still talking about Trey Lance, there's a thing over there always drips, says Kurt Warner shows improvements in Trey Lance. And yeah, I mean, if you watch the film breakdown that I did, pretty much there are a lot of people that did film breakdowns. You can see the improvement in Trey Lance's game. Don't get me wrong. There have been improvements in where he is now from where he was, I feel, last year. It's just that he still has a little ways to go. And if Brock Purdy didn't come out and play as well as he did, we're having a different discussion. But Brock Purdy played at an extremely high level for the 49ers last year. He's doing it again in training camp, despite what some people are saying in terms of the reports. And he's going to be just fine. When the 49ers get to Pittsburgh week 1 and you get the chance to see him, or if it is on Saturday night and you see Brock Purdy, when he throws the ball, it does not look any different than it did last year. His arm strength is more than strong enough to make the throws. The 45-yard shot that he had a couple of days ago to Brandon Ayuk is one of the best balls we've seen on the field all throughout this training camp. On top of that, deep outs are one of the best ways to tell the arm strength of the quarterback. He hit 2 of them yesterday, one to Deebo Samuel, one to Chris Conley on the other side of the field, one to his left, one to his right. Perfect shots. The type of throw that we were talking about earlier on in camp about with Trey Lance being able to make those throws and how much of an improvement he's made with hitting those throws. We saw that from Trey Lance yesterday twice. So all the talk about Trey Lance and his arm and he's not there, and you're going to see it. You haven't seen it yet, and that's why you're not believing it.
As far as Purdy, I mean, I was standing on the sideline yesterday, and he ripped an out to Danny Gray from the far hash, and I was literally mean, Danny Gray came off the field, almost ran into me, and I could hear that ball. It was absolutely had a lot on it. And the people that are like, yeah, Brock's got no arm. I don't know, man. I saw him stick that out. And as far as yesterday's practice, I counted about 6 or 7 just flat out dimes where he put it on the receiver's hands, sometimes on the run, sometimes deep out, sometimes corner routes. I mean, he literally was throwing the heck out of the ball yesterday. So I don't know. There's a lot of people who are skeptical of Brock's future. I'm just not one of them. All right, a couple of people here want to jump in. Clarence Speaks. Unpopular opinion, perhaps, but do we even need an elite quarterback? I would say you do. I'd say you need an elite quarterback, just simply because look at who's won the Super Bowl in the last 30 years. It's elite quarterbacks, and maybe every 10 years there's one non-elite quarterback that kind of bucks the trend. And then the question is, how good is Brock Purdy? There's a lot of people that are in a rush to say, you need an elite quarterback and Brock ain't it. Well, I mean, there are examples, Nick Foles and others, Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning, when he won the Super Bowl here in San Francisco, was far from elite. He was borderline subpar at that point. I mean, he was not very good. But, we've seen quarterbacks who weren't elite win Super Bowls. As I said, it happens like once a decade. But then there's also this kind of assumption that Brock Purdy is not nowhere close to an elite quarterback, partly because of his draft position, partly because of his stature. But I really have high hopes for Brock. I know a lot of people think I'm a Brock stan, but there you go. What do you think, Jack? I mean, do the 49ers need an elite quarterback? Is there any chance that Brock Purdy can become that elite quarterback?
You need an elite quarterback if you don't have elite talent elsewhere. I think that's the best way to put that, because like you said with Peyton Manning, at one point he was an elite quarterback, but when he won the Super Bowl in Santa Clara with the Broncos, he was far from an elite quarterback, but he had an elite defense. That elite defense is what helped them win that game almost more than he did. You talked about Nick Foles. That was a very good Philadelphia team that got hot at the end. And he played at a pretty high level, and that's an example of where you get to a point it's one game. It's one game. If you play better than the other guy on that one day, if the Eagles and the Patriots played each other 10 times that season, the Patriots probably win 8 of them. But that day they were better, and that's why they won the Super Bowl. And there's a lot of those examples throughout history. As far as Brock Purdy ever being elite, I don't know if he's going to ever be elite. But he's got a lot of things to like about him in his makeup and the way that he goes about playing the game. And I think the 49ers can win the Super Bowl this season with Brock Purdy if he is healthy, and if this defense plays the way that we expect them to play, and everything else around him. Will Brock Purdy win a Super Bowl 5 years from now when this team's completely different? Depends on if he progresses. If he continues to progress, they could, because you look at Tom Brady. Tom Brady won a Super Bowl. He was a 6th-round draft pick. Nobody thought Tom Brady was elite. Nobody thought Tom Brady was elite in 2001 when they went to the Super Bowl. I guarantee you that. There was nobody. There were years in Tom Brady's early portion of his career that even though he was winning multiple Super Bowls, if you can remember back to the early 2000s, if you can take yourself back to that time, there was a number of folks who were saying that is Tom Brady really elite? Look at this. If it wasn't for Adam Vinatieri making these field goals at the end of games, he doesn't win the Super Bowl.
Right. He's got Ty Law. He's got Richard Seymour. He's got all these other guys. They're doing it. He's just a caretaker.
He's got Bill Belichick. He's got all these things, right? And who knows what's going to happen? Trey, we don't know. I don't know. There's a lot to like about Brock Purdy, and I pushed back pretty hard on everybody that's said, been negative on him, because there's not a point that you can actually, there's not a stat or anything or even the film that really shows that he's not the guy. That everything that people have tried to say he can't do, you can find examples of him doing it. His numbers were off the charts last year. I heard through Twitter that you were making the comment about him pushing the ball down the field, at training camp, maybe last night on your show, Larry. And that's the thing, man. This is a guy who everybody talks about as whatever. They want to put their own thoughts on this guy. And he goes out there, and of the 3 quarterbacks that are out there, the top 3, he's the one guy that pushes the ball down the field. Now, is he hitting 45-yard throws on a daily basis? No. But we know that Brock Purdy is very good in the middle, intermediate area of the field at 10 to 19 yards, which is where you live in the NFL, 80% last year. And you see the ball going there a lot. And he's not afraid to let it rip down the field when it's there. And that's why I say I look at him right now, and I don't feel like I'm not here to say right now that he's gonna what he's gonna do this year, but he looks really good. And I think you put everything together, you start to put a game plan together, and I think this offense is gonna be right back to where they were last year at the end of the season.
And the players believe in him. It's pretty clear. Holland Tracy said, let's focus on the quarterbacks that'll give us the best chance to win now. That's not Trey, unfortunately. I say shelve him. There's no trade equity right now. Digital Drew jumps in. He says, Trey was struggling with the most basic formations in the first preseason game. Time to embrace the idea that he ain't it. We got this one from Johnny Dell's Football Academy. Trey and Kinlaw to the Commanders for Chase Young. Jeffrey Ray says, if Brock Purdy gets hurt, would they call Phillip Rivers? I don't know. I would hope not. Keith Maloney says, thank you, Jack, for asking the question. That comment was a dog whistle through a bullhorn. Talking about Michael Lombardi. All right, let's finish up with this. Niners Nation has the 9 players to watch in this preseason game this weekend against the Broncos. Here are their 9 guys. Jordan Mason, number 1. Ronnie Bell and Chris Conley, I guess 2 and 3. Troy Fumagalli, 4. Ilm Manning, 5. Isaiah Oliver, 6. Ambry Thomas, 7. Jake Moody, 8. Deshaun Jameson, 9. Those are the guys that they're really looking for this weekend. I'll throw it to you, and I titled the stream preview of 49ers Broncos preseason game number 2. But, we've kind of buried the lead a little bit. But what do you think, Jack? I mean, who are you looking forward to seeing this weekend?
I'm looking forward to Jordan Mason. And that's one of the ones that they put on there. But I also want to see Ty Davis Price. That's a competition right there between those two. And I want to watch. I think if you're watching this game, you need to pay really close attention to both of these guys. You look at Jordan Mason. He's a good running back. You watch just watching them on the practice field. There's a big difference in the way that these two guys run. Ty Davis Price is a one cut and go up the field kind of guy, whereas Jordan Mason, he has that ability, but he also was really good about setting up his blockers and then making that cut and doing those kind of things. He's underrated in those kind of ways. And the biggest thing that you need to watch when you watch Jordan Mason and Ty Davis Price when they're on the field is watch them in pass protection. I felt like Ty Davis Price was awful against the Raiders. I mean, it was really, really bad. The only time that Ty Davis Price squared up a blitzer or a guy in pass protection on Sunday against the Raiders was when he dove into the guy's feet and the linebacker didn't move fast enough, and so he hit him in the crotch. Other than that, everything was a throwing a shoulder, I'm diving at your feet, missing you most of the time. And I think there's a lot of negativity around the offensive line pass protection. A lot of that, I think, had to do with Ty Davis Price. That would have been a question I would have asked Chris Firster yesterday if I'd made it on time. So I think that's number 1. Jordan Mason, Ty Davis Price. I think that's a big one. Troy Fumagalli, he's a nice player. I think that you should be paying attention more to Cameron Latu because this is the guy the 49ers expect. Troy Fumagalli is a guy that's here to fill up the roster during training camp. Cameron Latu is a guy that they drafted expecting to be a piece of the puzzle, and Cameron Latu can't catch his breath right now, and that's a big problem. There's a lot to like about the kid, but unless he catches the ball, it's going to be a big struggle. Do you want me to keep going through all these things, or do you want me to stop at some point?
Well, you stop whenever you want. I'm looking for Cameron Latu and Braden Willis at tight end for sure. I think Latu needs a big preseason game or two to make this roster. I'm also looking for Robert Beal Jr. and Taco Charlton. I think the Niners badly need some defensive end help, and those two guys are probably the best candidates to help out. And then I'm going to be looking at a guy that's really impressed me in practice, and that's Taylor Hawkins. Can Taylor Hawkins carry the unbelievable production in practice into the game? And then I'm going to be looking at Isaiah Oliver and Quantrez Knight as two guys that I think Isaiah Oliver is going to be battling Quantrez Knight for a roster spot. And then I'll also be looking at the kickers, Jake Moody and Zane Gonzalez. Moody needs to make kicks. It's simple as that. There's no ambiguity to it. You just got to make kicks. Yep. So I think those are the guys that I'll be looking for. The guy that I'm most excited to see in the game is Robert Beal Jr. Beal had a rep, and granted, it was a rep. It was only one rep against Trent Williams, but he beat him to the edge and sacked Purdy in practice. And it was the kind of explosive pass rushing move that they drafted him exactly for that reason. And to me, I'm not that impressed with the backup DNs. Alex Barrett, Austin Bryant, Breland Speaks, Taco Charlton, Robert Beal. There's going to be guys around the league that are available either free agent wise or at the cut down or via trades that are better than these guys if these guys don't ball out and start to really show up. So if there's one guy on defense, it's Robert Beal Jr. If there's one guy on offense, it's probably Cameron Latu. But what do you think, Jack? Is it if I said to you Cameron Latu, Isaiah Oliver, two guys that, Latu was their third-round draft choice. Oliver was one of their major free agent signings in the offseason. If I said to you, you're going to bet everything that those guys are on or off the roster, what are you going with?
Yeah, that's two of the things that I had on my list was Latu and Oliver. I talked about Latu already. I think if Latu doesn't start catching the ball, doesn't show that he can make the catches, I don't see how you keep him on the roster. They drafted him to replace Charlie Werner, right? The guy that can block, but Charlie Werner can't catch. They replaced him with another guy who can block who can't catch. Braden Willis can catch, but he can't block the same way. He's not quite that blocker yet. He's working on it. He's working through it. In the slot corner spot, that's where you get Deshaun Jameson. If you're looking for a way that he's going to make this roster, it's going to be Isaiah Oliver not cutting it. He continues to step up, and they get him in thinking that he can be a return guy early on and help them out in the slot. So definitely watching Oliver. It's popped right in my, it's just stood right out to me on the practice field on Tuesday when the first team defense went out and they got into the nickel, and it wasn't Isaiah Oliver on the field. Instead, they put Ambry Thomas on the outside and they slid number 2 inside. And I wanted to talk about it afterwards, and I'm really glad that I wasn't going to say anything because you're not supposed to until Steve Wilkes went ahead and let everybody know at his press conference. So I think that's a big deal because they expected Isaiah Oliver to be their guy, and he hasn't taken that job yet. So when you're watching tomorrow night, pay attention to number 26 and see if there's somebody else inside. It's probably not going to be Lenore. It's probably going to be 22 or 47, AJ Parker. Those are the guys that have been lining up in the slot.
Yeah, it's pretty wide open competition for that slot for sure. And Matt Flores, realtor, says that interview Larry played yesterday about Kyle was so damning. Why aren't more people discussing this? I'm not even sure which one you're talking about, actually. Do you remember the interview that Kyle did? I did hear him expand on his Brock Purdy's the real deal comments. And basically what he said was, hey, Brock has played in the NFL and he's played well and he's played 7 games and we have the film and he impressed me and he impressed the players. And it's not, I think there were so many people suggesting that Brock's success was not real and that it was not sustainable and that it was lucky. And that just because Jimmy started fast and Jimmy crapped out and got worse and worse and worse, that, by definition, that means that none of us can believe that Brock's success last year was sustainable or real in any way. And Shanahan just pushed back and said, you know what? And I heard him on the radio expanding on he did an interview, I think, on Sirius XM. And I didn't play this yesterday, so I'm not sure if this is even what Matt Flores, realtor, is talking about. But I did hear him today on the radio expand on his real deal comment. And he was basically like saying to all those people out there who think that Brock Purdy's some flash in the pan, lucky, that, somehow it wasn't real and what you were watching was not authentic and is not sustainable, think again. And I think that's the right thing to say. I mean, a lot of people took it as, oh my God, Kyle's putting him into a Hall of Fame class and now there's tons of pressure. I don't think so. I think he was pushing back on all the people who were saying this kid is, a flash in the pan, or this kid's the NFL version of Jeremy Lin, and he's going to come crashing back to earth in year 2. And the Niners are going to be sitting there going, oh my God, look at this guy's not even anything close to what he was last year. And that's Kyle just saying, not going to happen. This guy's real.
Yeah, I don't. Is Brock Purdy the real deal? Yeah, he's the real deal. That's why they expect him to be the starter. In their eyes, he is the real deal. You didn't even forget anything that Kyle Shanahan has said about Brock Purdy. If you want to know that Brock Purdy is the real deal, read what Brock Purdy said in the interview to Albert Breer, walking into the locker room before the first preseason game last year, having Fred Warner and Trent Williams walking in front of him. And they're talking about how they're looking forward to watching Brock Purdy play in the game the next day because of what they've seen on the field. That says way more than anything that Kyle Shanahan's going to say in terms of the reason why this team believes in him, the reason why Brock Purdy's the guy, the reason wwhy you've heard all this stuff is because the team believes in him. And they were seeing it long before anybody else. And when it comes to Brock Purdy, it's just people, hey, he was a 7th round draft pick and he's a shorter guy and he doesn't throw the ball a mile. And so he must suck. And that's really what he's battling against. And it's not going to change until he shuts everybody up.
The play, as Texas here says, Texas Niners says the players see it. I'll say this. I've been covering the team for years and doing the pregame show on the radio for over a decade. Now I'm on YouTube and my vantage point's different, right? My vantage point is now, by the way, somebody says Jack has a yipper dog going in the background there.
I do.
That train went by once already too. But we'll finish with this. The last 2 years, this year and last year, I've had an opportunity to cover the 49ers on a day-to-day basis and be in the locker room and actually face up the players and get a chance to talk to Shanahan, talk to Lynch, talk to the players, and have a much better feeling for the vibe of the team. And if you said to me, what is the moment that stands out more than any other, it was clearly the Tuesday after the Miami game, where I walked into that locker room not sure what the vibe was going to be like. You had lost Jimmy Garoppolo for the year. Everybody knew it. It was a Super Bowl team that had lost their starting quarterback and was now going to have to go the rest of the way with Mr. Irrelevant, the last pick in the draft. And yet the feeling in the room that day was one of optimism, belief, energy. People were bouncing around. People were feeling good. You could tell right there. I didn't have to go ask the players, do you guys believe in Brock Purdy? It was like you knew they believed in Brock Purdy by the way these guys are football players. They're not actors. If they didn't believe, they would have been like talking about the season almost in past tense. They would have been bemoaning the injury. Oh, this is real. We're really going to have to dig deep. That kind of thing. Oh, it's a kick to the gut. People were like, hey, we're feeling good. Like they hadn't lost anybody at all because they knew what we eventually would find out, which is that Brock Purdy was more than a suitable replacement and that their season was not done and that their playoff hopes were not dashed. And that, to me, was the most interesting moment. And it was it revealed to me their true belief in Brock Purdy. And then the rest of it is just like, you can get a quote here, get a quote there. And guys would tell you over the course of the season, yeah, we really believe in him. Here's why. And Ray told me, man, I was out of the huddle one time and he started MFing me and yelling at me and getting in my face. And I knew then, man, this guy was a real leader. So I don't know. To me, that's the interesting one right there is that just the players have a belief in Brock Purdy, and the fans, unfortunately, I think need to see it again and maybe see it again and again and again. But the players don't. The players know what they have in Brock Purdy. Jack, give me your final thought on the way out the door. We're going to see you tomorrow at Levi's for the game. Get there plenty of time. I'm sure it's always difficult getting in and out of that place, especially with all the first game of the year, the new protocols and people that are doing, part-time work, for the first time all year. And there'll be some wrinkle to getting in that, that'll be difficult tomorrow. Bank on that. But give me your final thought before we call it quits here.
No, I think the Flyers are in a really good position. Tomorrow, like we said, we went through a number of people to pay attention to, positions to pay attention to. You're really going to be seeing the depth of the 49ers on display, because the 49ers starters may play a little bit tomorrow. You might see a little bit. I think we're going to walk away from tomorrow with a much better idea of what's happening at the second quarterback position as well. And I just feel like the 49ers are in a good spot moving forward. Pay attention to what you see on Larry's channel. Pay attention to what you see over on mine. Go to Inside the 49ers with Jack Hammer. Check it out. Also get to 49ers.pressdemocrat.com. I hear a lot of people talking about wanting to hear more than just a quarterback conversation. Well, then you need to check out my channel and you need to check out what I'm writing, because every day after practice, and Larry does the same thing. I know pretty much everybody is at some point, but check out the channel and check out 49ers.pressdemocrat.com. There's always more than just the quarterbacks. I do as good of a job as possible to give you everything that happens with these quarterbacks. So I'm not talking about just giving you their numbers. I give you their stats, but I also break down every throw that they're making. So check it out. I hope you guys will.
Yeah, Jack spends the time to do it, and he's there every day. So absolutely, I would endorse him fully. Go check out Jack's channel. Of course, go like and subscribe over there, and check out what Jack's writing in the Santa Rosa Press Democrat. It's always good analysis. Jack, have a great Friday, man. We'll see you in Santa Clara tomorrow.
Awesome. Looking forward to it, Larry. Have a good day.
You too. The great Jack Hammer in the house. All right, let's do this. We'll hit the chat one more time, but first, a word from our sponsors. We are brought to you by Marin Auto Glass, marinautoglass.com, 415-883-3030. We're also brought to you by New York Style Italian Sausage. New York Style Sausage Company is my favorite sausage. And they, whether it's Italian mild, the Italian spicy, the breakfast sausage. I just got some chorizo from down there. I'm going to do some chorizo and eggs. Burritos. Oh, those are going to be fantastic. The breakfast burrito with the chorizo, absolutely mouthwatering. They got 2 locations for Pig and a Pickle, our title sponsor as well. They're in Emeryville and Corte Madera. And, of course, they're open from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. or until they run out in both spots. Check them out in Marin County, and here's where or in Emeryville. Here's their location in Marin.
So New York Style Sausage was started over 70 years ago. We are the largest producer of fresh Italian sausage on the West Coast.
What makes our sausage in New York Style is really the recipe came from back east, from New York, from Connecticut.
If you look at all of our labels, there's maximum 4 or 5 ingredients, which we're really proud of.
There's no preservatives, no MSG, fresh in, fresh out.
The pork comes in fresh, goes out fresh. There's never any freezing throughout the process. We've always used fine quality cuts. We're never going to deter from that. It's one of the reasons why our sausage is so good. I guarantee you put our sausage up against anybody else's from a flavor standpoint, no one will beat it, hands down.
Hey, do yourself a favor and do me a favor. Go buy a package of the New York Style Italian sausage. Guaranteed you will love it. Guaranteed.
All right, we're coming down the home stretch on the Krug Show. Busy day today. We were on Ryan Hensley's channel at 9 a.m. We just did a live stream with Jack Hammer. I'll be joining Damon Bruce on his channel at 2 o'clock. Rohan, I'm going to be on Rohan's channel today at 3:30. And then Mark Adams is going to join me on this channel at 5 o'clock, and we're going to talk about the incredible job that Mark has done pushing Roger Craig for the Hall of Fame. Roger Craig belongs in Canton. It's one of my life goals is to get Roger into Canton. I believe he belongs. I believe if Bill Walsh were still alive, he'd be in already. So there's no question in my mind that Roger belongs in, and Mark Adams will stop by, and we'll talk a little bit about all the work that he has done. He basically heard me on with John Lund and Dennis Brown on KMBR a couple years ago in a pregame show, and I found a couple articles on Roger Craig for the Hall of Fame, and I'd heard that Roger was going to be at the game. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to lay this case out for why Roger's a Hall of Famer. And I said, John, Dennis, can you guys just give me a minute or two to just lay this out? And they did. And I laid out this case top to bottom of why Roger should be a Hall of Famer. Mark just happened to be listening, and he was so moved by my plea for Roger to be in the Hall of Fame and moved by the arguments that he decided on his own to kind of make his own push to get Roger in the Hall of Fame. And Mark has taken the baton and run with it. He interviewed Eddie D. He interviewed George Seifert. He interviewed Joe Montana, Steve Young, Jerry Rice, Ronnie Lott, Brent Jones, and others, all about Roger Craig and why Roger belongs in the Hall of Fame. And he put together this amazing video. And anyway, I'm going to join. He's going to join me on my channel tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about where that stands, and we'll talk about Roger and why I believe Roger belongs in the Hall of Fame, and we'll get into some of the anecdotes of what his teammates said about him. Roger Craig was the first thousand, and there's no doubt in my mind that Roger Craig is an NFL Hall of Famer, and it's sad that he's not there. And the Niners are underrepresented when you think about the dynasty that they had from 1981 to almost 2000. They won 10 games every season for like 16 years in a row. That's an amazing accomplishment. And you think about all the Lombardi trophies and all the all the incredible moments, and yet there's not that many Hall of Famers. Jerry's in and Roger's in, or Jerry's in and Steve's in and Joe's in, Ronnie's in, Haley's in. BY's in, but Roger belongs there. And there's just no question in my mind. He changed the game. Jay Mills says it right here. Roger Craig changed the game. So anyway, Mark Adams will stop by at 5 o'clock tonight on the Krug Show. Mark Graves jumps in. Hey, Mark, good to see you, man. He says, Larry, thank you for not being lazy for Roger Craig. I love you, boy, but you're fucking lazy. MF says, I heard Kapler on KMBR last night. That made me cringe. Kapler was suspended today from what I just read. Did I see that right? Kapler was suspended by MLB for going back to the dugout and being in the dugout after this is Alex Pavlovich on Twitter. Gabe Kapler has been suspended for tonight's game in Atlanta and fined for returning to the dugout after he was ejected Tuesday night. He's turning on Danny Emmerman. He's getting ejected. When he normally shows no emotion at all. Cap's feeling the pressure. The Giants are circling the freaking drain. And, Farhan did jack at the trade deadline. And those two guys are seeing things slip away. The Giants were a playoff team. They still could maybe be a playoff team, but there's too many games left. People will say, oh, there's a lot of games left. That's the problem. They're playing like S, and there's a lot of games left. If this were September 18th, maybe I'd feel better about them going to the playoffs. The fact that it's August 18th and they haven't gotten a big hit in 2 months and they've been the worst offensive team in baseball since the middle of June and haven't done a damn thing about it, that's why they're not going to the playoffs. I mean, simple as that. By the way, if you can, hit like and subscribe. If you hit like, that helps more people find our shows. If you hit subscribe, you hit that notification bell every time we go live, you'll get a notification that we're going live. And right now we are sitting at 21,658 total subscribers. We've had over 1 million views of our content, live streams and videos in the last 28 days alone. How about that? Over 1 million First time in the history of this channel, which is about almost a year and a half old at this point, 1 million views of Krug Show live streams or videos in the last 28 days alone. Easily our biggest month right now, and we're going to, obviously kill it all throughout football season. So thanks to all of you. Thanks to my son, Kevin, who's a big help to me in a lot of ways, and he produces a lot of these videos. Please check him out. If you want to subscribe to the show, please do. If you want to support the show in other ways, you can do that as well. If you go to my YouTube page, The Krug Show on YouTube, there's a store, and you can buy T-shirts and merchandise, and we've got a brand new one up. Let me see if I can show it to you here. The newest T-shirt is out. We designed it, and we put it up, and where is it? Here it is. Here it is. There you go. On the front, it has the Krug Show the same thing I'm wearing right now. It has the same, whatever you call this, logo on the front. And on the back, it says, "You're effing lazy." So there you go. I ordered one of those for myself today. Very, very good. Check that out. I love that I love that T-shirt. Adata 84, 1 million views. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Joking. Love you, Krug. Yeah, that's G-Rad's favorite line. Nobody cares. Ty Alston jumps in on the chat. Hey, what's up, Ty? He says, "Hey, Larry, let me borrow some of those views." Yeah. We'll loan them. We'll sell them out. Like I used to do second semester my freshman year at Sac State. I would sell some of my meal credits to some of my fat buddies in the dorms. Yeah, you ran out of meal credits at the DC? Here, give me $50 and I'll sign some over to you. There you go. Anyway, hey, good stuff. Thanks to Jack Hammer. Thanks to all of you. Join me at 5 on this channel for Mark Adams and some Roger Craig Niner talk. I'm looking forward to that stream quite a bit. Join me at 3:30 on Rohan's channel. Join me at 2 o'clock on Damon Bruce's channel. Guys, it's time for lunch. I mean, the most important part of the day, it's lunch. So hope everybody has a great lunch. We'll see you hopefully. And if you're there at the game tomorrow and you see me walking around, come over and say hi and tell me you're a fan of the Krug Show or tell me you hate the Krug Show. Either one, come over and say hi. Have a great day, everybody. Peace.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you gon' get exactly what you asked for. Here for whatever you bring me, getting handled. I answer to no one.